5,648 jelly beans, 3 stuffed bears, 64 packets of Swiss Miss, 1,512 rubber bands, or 1 gallon of any fluid. What do these items have in common? Well, they'll all fit inside this, the 1 gallon YETIrambler jug. Welcome to the Channel Droo. This is another Droo review, and I am Droo. On today's episode, we are going to be reviewing this 1 gallon YETI jug. This jug is kind of a personal favorite of mine, not because it's so useful or can't live without it, but just because it's kind of fun. It's almost a gimmick, but it is actually more useful than I initially anticipated. The YETIrambler lineup is mostly water bottles, and they come from sizes from pretty small, like 10 ounces, I don't know exactly, all the way up to 64, which is pretty big. But then they went a step further and they made this thing. They also made its younger brother, the half-gallon jug, but I went big and I bought the 1 gallon jug. So the jug and the bottle are actually kind of fundamentally different. All the Rambler bottles have the same top and they're interchangeable no matter what the size. But as you can see, the jug has a way different top. It's much bigger. The jugs, in addition to having this huge opening on the top, have a really nice steel but rubberized handle and a secondary smaller hole for pouring and drinking that has a screw top. And this screw top is interchangeable with the smaller Rambler screw top lids. So what's the point? At $130 US, is this thing actually practical, or is it just another overpriced YETI flex? At first, I didn't see much of a real world use for this thing. I got one because it was cool and I wanted it, not because I thought it would be so incredibly useful. But I've had it for nearly a year and I've actually been pleasantly surprised, and I can see more real world use for this thing than I ever did before I bought it. I'll just run through a few of the uses that I personally think this thing has in the real world. Number one is like a crew working far away from a base, like an oil rig. A guy could fill this up with hot water, hot coffee, and then drive out into the middle of the field and then have enough coffee for them and a couple buddies to help. And a couple of co-workers who would also enjoy some nice hot coffee. Number two, I think this thing could be pretty good for car camping, as you definitely don't want to backpack with it. It's very heavy, but you could keep some really cold, like a bunch of ice in here while you're car camping, and just kind of have a separate cold water source away from a big jug that'll heat up quickly. Number three is raft trips, especially in the desert where I go and it's hot and the water is too. This full of ice will last a pretty long time, and you can treat yourself and some of your co-rafters with a nice cold refreshing drink in the middle of the desert. Number four is outdoor winter activities. This will keep things warm for a really long time too. One of my co-workers would bring a thermos full of hot tea to give to the kids who we were coaching and skiing, and that was a pretty good idea, but she was very limited on space. Now, had she had one of these, she could put a whole lot more tea in and give the kids a slightly larger serving and be able to share it with more people. And there's plenty of other use cases for this too. Those are just the first four I thought of. I've had this for nearly a year now, so let's talk about my experience with it and the ups and downs that I've had while using it. The first thing you might notice is I painted mine. I originally got the navy blue, which I didn't like because I thought it would get too hot, and I was mainly using mine to keep things cold. But the navy blue is literally the only one available. So I painted mine to emulate the ancestral Puebloan pottery. As a tribute to the people who inhabited the canyons in the area I'd be using this in the most. Also, the primarily white design I felt would help reflect the sun and keep it cooler, although it did end up that there's a lot of black on there too. It is also worth noting that this comes in far fewer colors than the normal Rambler bottles do. They don't release it in every new color they release the Rambler in. As far as its performance, it does a really good job of keeping things hot and cold. It's the same technology as any of these insulated water bottles, vacuum sealed. It's extra thick because it's so big. They could add extra thickness, so it really does a really good job, and the cap is incredibly thick. I've never been dissatisfied with hot things getting cold or cold things getting hot while using this. The only time I've really had an issue with it is when I leave it in a hot baking car in 100-degree heat for 4+ days. Then it kind of loses the cold, but you know, that's to be expected. As far as the form and the shape of it goes, I think the jug's really quite appealing. Any fatter might look too stout, and any thinner would be awkward. It really keeps the design language that YETI has with the Ramblers going pretty strong here, with the stainless steel bottom, the stainless steel top, and then the signature YETI flare before it gets to the cap. It's distinctly not a Rambler, but it is also unmistakably YETI. You see it and you think that's YETI, but you also think that's something different than the Rambler bottle. And YETI is such a brand now that I think it's really important for them to keep this consistent design language and make sure their products are not only tough and functional, and also appeal to the customer in the same way the others do. It is pretty tall, but it's short enough that I actually am able to fill it in most of the sinks in my house without issue. Initially I thought this would be a problem, but it actually fills up in my kitchen and all my bathroom sinks as well. In my kitchen sink, I can even keep the big top on and fill it just through the small hole, which is super useful. In fact, this large cap is the biggest issue I've had with the jug. It can be difficult to thread properly, as is the case with many large threaded objects. And when you do misthread it, it will leak. Like if you have this in your car and you didn't get it threaded perfectly and it's sideways, there will be a puddle of water. It's a slow leak, but it will in fact leak a pretty noticeable amount. The other issue I have with this lid is it can be so hard to get off. When you thread it properly and really get it tight so it doesn't leak, getting it off is so incredibly difficult, especially because it's so big that you can't really grip it well with one hand and twist with the other. So it's a two-person job, or you need to like put it between your legs and just twist as hard as you possibly can. And that's just annoying if nothing else. And it's also really difficult to tell if it's been threaded correctly, and I usually don't figure it out unless it's already leaking. Maybe they can make some of their famous YETI lube, but for the top of the Rambler jugs. That would be nice. Then I wouldn't get stuck so mad. That brings me to my final gripe, which is also on the lid, and it's the handle. It's not the handle itself. The handle itself is great, but then the screws they use have this crazy like 3-prong bulbous screw head, and it's a proprietary thing. But why? Why, YETI? What do you think, you're Apple? No right to repair? It's ridiculous. Like, I wish a company would just put a normal screw there, so if it does, I don't know, loosen a bunch, then I could just tighten it without having to find a specialty screwdriver, which I don't even think is available to buy, or like send it in and buy a new one. It's just stupid. I really hate when companies do stuff like that. Anyways, the handle itself is this big beefy steel piece, and it's got this really nice rubber grip. It's nicer than it looks. It's pretty cushy, and I think it's simple and really strong. And other than the ridiculous screw heads, I think the handle is a really awesome addition and is one of the key features of the jug that makes it so nice. The cap here is the same cap you'll find on the normal Rambler magnetic cap lid, mag lock. I don't know, they probably have a copyrighted name for it, but it's the same one. It's interchangeable, and it sticks onto the back of this cap really nicely. I've never had an issue with losing it on here. It's a great design. And the little hole it covers is really a good size for drinking and pouring. There's no ventilation, so the pouring gets a little gluggy, I guess, but it seems like it's small enough and controlled enough that it's not spraying all over the place. Also, for drinking, it's a little tricky. The size is right, but holding the rest of the jug is not. But it is doable, but make sure you have 2 hands available. Another thing I think is worth mentioning is the shape and the handle. If it was any wider, it would probably hit your leg as you walked and be really annoying. But for me and my body shape, it kind of just fits flush next to my leg when I walk, and it makes it really easy and pleasant to carry it and walk with it. Overall, I've been really impressed and totally satisfied with my jug. Sure, there are a few annoyances, but overall, I love my jug, and I'm honestly even tempted to get a half-gallon version. I know I don't need it, but YETI just has a way of making you want to buy more. At $130, this is not just a no-brainer buy. This is something you buy kind of for the novelty, although it can be really useful as well. Realistically, for $130, this is not good value. There are plenty of YETI knockoffs out there, like Ozark Trail, the Walmart brand, and I'm sure they have similar jugs for way cheaper if all you care about is keeping stuff cold. Personally, YETI is the original. I kind of support them, and I think as a company, they're a lot better to support than Walmart, and they deserve my money more than a company that just blatantly rips them off. But the price is understandably hard to justify. YETI is also a company that tries to give back to the outdoor community when it can. It also treats its employees really well. I've met several of their employees, and everyone loves working there. So to me, that makes buying the YETI stuff worth it more than buying Arctic or Ozark Trail or one of the hundreds of other knockoffs. In conclusion, I would say if you are a fan of the brand and you think you have a viable use for it, go ahead and buy it. It's awesome. But beware the leakage. Or maybe you just want to buy it because you're obsessed with YETI stuff. Whatever. But I hope you enjoyed this review. Thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing, liking the video, leaving a comment. Also, I should mention, on the theme of YETI, I am doing a giveaway till the end of August where I'm giving away at least one and maybe more YETI bricks. So there'll be a link in the video description and in the cards at the end for you to find out how you could win one for yourself. Right now the odds are like 1 in 20 that you win one, so definitely check the video out and subscribe to win.